Government agencies are realizing they need to adapt new and improved development and delivery methods in order to meet the ever-increasing demands of their end users. This isn't simply another retooling or reorganization exercise. It's adopting a new mindset focused on the concept of continuous engineering, the idea that a software product or system is never done until it's taken out of service. The Department of Defense and the U.S. Air Force understand the ability to fight and win depends on their agility to sense and react to cyber threats. They realize that future conflicts will be fought as much in the ether as it will be on the land, at sea, or in the air. Today, we'll be talking with Nicolas Chaillan, Chief Software Officer for the U.S. Air Force. Nicolas brings a wide and varied background to this new role, having started numerous companies and has brought multiple successful products to market. Mr. Chaillan is a leading advocate and evangelist of agile product development and delivery, championing continuous engineering across the Air Force. We'll talk DevOps, software factories, security, continuous engineering, and how these concepts are being applied to ensure the U.S. Air Force is prepared to fight and win the digital wars, now and in the future. Welcome to the Government CIO Agile Advocate Podcast. I'm here today with Nicolas Chaillan, Chief Software Officer of the United States Air Force. Thanks for coming down to the podcast, Nicolas.
Thank you for having me.
So you have an interesting background, private industry, products. In fact, I think it traces all the way back to 15 years old. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, I guess I was always passionate about software and IT, and so I started pretty young. I was 7 when I started coding, and 12 I kind of sold my first game, and 15 I founded my company back in France.
You founded a company at 15?
Yes.
I was just hoping to get to school on time. Wow. So what's the role of the CSO?
Well, it's a new role. It's the first ever, I believe, in the U.S. government. We see it as the enabler for software. So you can think of it as a way to remove the impediments for Air Force programs, to move to DevOps, move to being more agile, and be able to build software more securely, faster, while having the ability to improve our understanding of the needs of the warfighter. So it's really enabling and removing those impediments.
So DevOps and DevSecOps. And I'll be honest with you, I've never been a big fan of putting a couple more letters in there because I've had people expand that to a crazy thing. But the more I listen to some of your presentations, you're starting to convert me a bit here. So tell me the difference between DevOps and DevSecOps.
Yes, I'm not a fan of Sec, DevSecOps, Sec. So we came up with DevSecOps. And by the way, we didn't come up with it. One of the co-founders of Devops actually used DevSecOps in his book. So that's why we picked DevSecOps and not SecDevOps or something else. Really, I think the difference between DevOps and DevSecOps is the ability to have this baked-in security in a continuous monitoring kind of way. So when it's running, when the software is running, being able to understand what's going on in real time, having access to that telemetry. And really all of this is based on containers. So everything we do is containerized. We use Kubernetes, so we're not locked into a cloud provider. We're not locked into a platform as a service. And really having these containers give us the ability to inject sidecar containers, which actually give us the ability to understand what's going on. And so the sec side of DevSecOps is not just, hey, I'm going to do some static code analysis on my source code. It's really going to enable us to get this continuous monitoring ability, which is really what gives us the continuous ATO.
You led right into the next one. So I can't tell you how attractive that sounds from somebody who is looking at releases, and I'm not making this up. They're held up 6 to 8 months by security reviews. They're sitting right there at the gate, but they get the last just monstrous compliance kind of approach to it. Talk about continuous ATO.
Yeah, so continuous ATO started with Kessel in the Air Force, and really they were able to bring this to life rapidly, mostly by demonstrating that you can bring in this baked-in security as a turnkey process. And really, once you have that process, and it's not just security, it's also automated testing. And so the continuous ATO that we're designing is a DoD-wide approach. As part of my role as a co-lead of the DoD Enterprise DevSecOps Initiative, which is run by DoD CIO, OSD, and the Air Force now, we are bringing this layered ATO approach, authority to operate, that's continuous, where you don't have to go through a manual process between releases. And really the key components are kind of three folds. One is the automated testing. So unit testing, integration testing, end-to-end testing, regression testing, and have that testing coverage posture where you know you're improving your trust in the software by having that automated testing. The automated security, of course, is important, having that continuous scanning when you're building software multiple times a day, not, once every year or 6 months after you finish coding. And then the continuous monitoring side of the house as well. So that DevSecOps stack we bring with containers and sidecar containers give us that ability to trust while the software is running that we can actually trust what's going on. And that gives us the continuous ATO DoD-wide with complete reciprocity across all the services.
How did that go over with security at first?
I think they're pretty excited because honestly what we're bringing is kind of this zero trust model across the entire stack and down to the container level. And honestly, when they see the ability of being able to track what's going on and get the logs in real time and telemetry of the applications and see the findings in real time, not have to wait, 6 months to get the results of the scans, all the tests, and also for the program management side of the house to be able to be aware of what's going on in real time is game changing. So already you actually get more visibility, so you're more than happy to trust the process of a continuous ATO as well.
Continuous engineering. So a quote from Al Dupre, he's a former director of innovation at NIST. He was on an earlier podcast series. Software is never done until it's taken out of service. That's a really different approach to take things because frankly, over the decades, we've gotten a product done, shepherded into the nursing home called production, and then it went away.
That's correct. That does not exist anymore. At least we are pushing for continuous engineering as well. In fact, one of the issues we're facing is the color of money, right? You have funding allocated and you have, of course, sustainment money, which one might say there is no more sustainment in software because it's continuously evolving with continuous engineering. And so in that case, how do you use that funding to do that continuous engineering, which technically speaking, the software is always changing. And so 5 years from now, it's just going to be a different piece of software. It's just going to still be performing its mission. And that's completely changing the way not only we acquire and procure software, but also maintain it. And honestly, with continuous engineering, also the maintenance is completely different as well.
Something I really wanted to talk about was software factories. Talk some more about that.
Yes, a software factory is a loaded term that really brings kind of this DevSecOps pipeline or continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline to build software that's going to have all that baked in security we talked about, automated testing. Our new factories are completely containerized using that continuous ATO approach with the DoD Enterprise DevSecOps initiative. You can think of it as all the tools and technology to not just be able to build software right from the get-go and have that baked-in security, but also to run the software in production. So resilience, like I said, we use Kubernetes, which is open source run by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, CNCF, which allows us to make sure we're not getting locked into Red Hat or Pivotal or any cloud provider. So by having that abstraction layer, our factories can be moving from a cloud to an on-premise environment, classified environment, unclassified environment, all without having to change a line of code. And so we get that abstraction of the networking side, the storage, and the compute. And on top of that, we can bake in our cyber tools, which are injected automatically into the factory. So the sidecar container stack is automatically injected into the factory. So you get all the logs, all the telemetry, behavioral detection, not just CV scanning. So that gives us to a zero trust model of the entire stack, the factory itself, because your factory becomes de facto your crown jewel. If someone gets into the factory and compromise the factory, then they can tamper with your source code, in which case the battle is over.
So the software factory is actually where I'm producing, where I'm developing, right? Yeah, that's right. So it's is it a desired state kind of configuration where you can take a package of all of the things that I want to be able to use to make my product and then be able to deploy those, provision those, and have those ready to go?
Yeah, so it's a way to deploy the tools first. So you can think of the factory as where you're going to put all your different development tools, test suites, build tools, cyber scanning tools, even compliance NIST tools, and also deployment tools and logs and telemetry. And then all that is containerized, all that is automated. We use what we call infrastructure as code, which means that the entire stack is code. So if I have to change any pieces of it, it's just changing code. And that way I have complete track of what's going on between the initial phase of the building the factory itself to building the code on top of the factory. That is really my mission and what I'm trying to actually build. You're not here just to build a factory. Of course, you're here to build a mission application by using the factory in the beginning, right?
Yeah, this is it's kind of a hard concept for people to get their heads around, because you're talking to them about, well, I'm building the process to help you build the code. And I think I lose them in the second one. But that's an absolutely powerful thing to be able to. Then what we start to move from is, back in the mainframe days, you had COBOL PL1, you had an SNA network, and fit your product into that technology. Now with this, you can actually get the technology you want for your product and not have this proliferation of tools that scares all the guys that have to take care of them.
Yeah, and on top of it, the factory can support 16 programming languages, 23 different type of databases between big data, AI machine learning tools. So you can really pick the right tool to get the job done. We're moving to microservices and smaller code base instead of having this massive monolithic applications. So you can now pick the right tool to get the job done. All the containers are self-updating, so the factory itself self-updates, self-patch, no more manual patching. So if you need a new release, you don't have to go and actually do anything. It self-updates every 4 hours. So the container itself, the container stack by itself is game-changing. But on top of that, you get that automation, right? So the key of DevOps is automation, right? Agile started 19 years ago, pretty much when I started. I've been doing Agile, 20 years. And now DevOps is kind of the evolution of how do you take that culture and add tools to automate the process. Agile always thought that people were more important than tool, which is true, but you can also use tools to improve people's processes.
Yes, definitely let them move up the food chain. So containerization, you can talk about that a lot. I wasn't a big fan of containers when it first came out. And it's been out for a long time. The user space has been out for a long time. And Docker has started to make it easier to use. But I didn't really see the value until recently, until I started pulling images that I was creating and then giving them so they can talk more about containerization, how it works.
Yeah, there's multiple ways as to why containers are game-changing. I think first there's container orchestration tools like Kubernetes, and that really brings a ton of value in terms of resilience, A/B testing, automation. Without Kubernetes, you will not be able to inject cyber tools and scanning tools and have that baked-in zero trust model that we want to have. So there's the orchestration side of the house to make sure that if something goes wrong, it recovers rapidly and brings us scale. And so the key of containers is one, horizontal scaling. So if you have a lot of traffic and you have a peak of traffic, you can spin up more containers and auto scale based on demand, and it goes up and then down. So not only are you saving in cloud compute costs, but you also can become more resilient. And of course, in a DoD's mission, what is more important than being resilient? Two, I think it's a great way to ship software. You have layers with containers. You can add the OS, you can add Java to it, and then you can add your application on top of Java. So part of the DoD Enterprise DevSecOps initiative, we have this central repository of containers. We have 172 containers we're maintaining for the enterprise. Those containers have all these layers baked in. And so, for example, the OS is already stigged and passing the DoD requirements. So if a vendor wants to use that as a base OS, they don't have to do the stig. And so you build layers. And so a Java app will use my Java container that's already hardening Java, which already use my OS container as a base image. So you build up your stack. And it's a great way to ship software and make sure it's going to scale. It's going to run anywhere. You're not going to be having issues of portability. A lot of people initially thought it was more about security, which I don't think containers are particularly secure. It's more a way of shipping software, scaling, resilience. But you can also inject sidecar container, and that's where you get the security. You get that visibility. You get, we use a service mesh called Istio, ISTIO, and Istio is really bringing that baked-in zero trust model. And that adds the zero trust / whitelisting / mutual TLS tunneling. So the entire stack is encrypted. Whether or not the development team that built the container even use encryption, I don't care. Because my sidecar container hijacks the IP table and inject that mutual TLS tunnel. So we get all these baked in by default, no human in the loop security with a sidecar stack. So if you combine Kubernetes with containers, and we use OCI compliant containers, which is open source containers, so we're not locked into Docker or any other company as well.
Kubernetes certainly seems to be at the core of your tech stack. I've come to really appreciate Kubernetes. It was a big beast when I first looked at it. But I really love it for its deployment capability and the way it abstracts everything away from me. And the containers, sweet. That sidecar pattern, really nice too. So it is definitely at your... Also, talk to me about open source software. You seem to lean heavily towards that. Why is that?
Yes, I think, first of all, security by obfuscation is gone. And so being able to use open source products where you can see the code and you know what's going on and you have millions of eyes on it, you're going to get better security. On top of that, it's very tough to compete and find the talent that these guys can find just by working together across teams. And you have, very large companies and Fortune 500 that are behind Kubernetes in particular with Google, IBM, Red Hat, Pivotal, many other companies as well. And so you end up with that abstraction layer, which is game-changing. I think people at first did not realize how much moving to the cloud could get us locked into a cloud provider. So if I want a cloud storage, I don't directly talk to the Amazon or Azure APIs. I talk to Kubernetes, which will then talk to the APIs. And so my code, and because we're moving to infrastructure as code and everything is code, my entire code is now abstracted. And so that alone is game changing. On top of that, you add the sidecar pattern you talked about, and you add the resilience baked in, self-healing, rolling updates. So if you have a new release of a container, it's just going to spin up the new version and slowly kill the old version with no downtime. So no more manual patching, no more worrying about updating your software. So that alone is game changing as well.
I love the abstraction of the container actually comes out as something that it just takes care of, which is really good. All right, so the elephant in the parlor here, Kessel Run. So Steve Kellman wrote an article in the Federal Computer Week titled, "Why Kessel Run is Such a Big Deal." Let our listeners know what Kessel Run is, and then tell us why it's such a big deal.
Kessel Run has been the first try in the U.S. government to adopt agile DevSecOps at scale and deliver capabilities in a matter of days and demonstrate that it could be done. So why it's a big deal is really because they were the first and they actually did that and they demonstrated that, yes, you can do it. And once people realize you can do it, suddenly everything is possible. So it started way before I joined the government, so I can't take any credit for that yet. But again, the key of what we're trying to do is to scale, right? So Kessel Run was great to also bring industry partners like Pivotal and Airmen together to do pair programming and code and really learn fast and fail fast. And the key is to fail once but not twice for the same reason. And they've been awesome at delivering value and demonstrating this could be done. Now, the key for us is to be able to scale this and to scale the model across DoD and not just the Air Force as well. It's going to be all about bringing all vendors, right? And so companies like Lockheed or Northrop or others that need to also be part of that discussion. We have 34 Pathfinders now. Pathfinders are just DoD programs, massive programs like Aegis in the Navy, F-35, F-22, F-16, and so on. And we have, Jake, the AI, Joint AI Center from DoD CIO and many others. And pretty much all the key programs of DoD are part of the DoD Enterprise DevSecOps initiative now. And so for us, it was really about how do we bring all these primes and different contractors to follow that journey with us, because we would certainly not be able to be successful without these people as well.
So what do you think is going to be the big challenge in propagating across there?
Well, of course, I think it's the biggest issue is the training and self-learning. People don't realize just yet, but even on the commercial side, even with universities, it's very difficult to keep up with the pace of technology, even more so in IT. Kubernetes is 4 years old and completely disrupted the way we build software. DevOps is 9 years old, also changed the process. A software factory did not exist more than a few years ago. And again, that's completely disrupting the way we test, the way we use cybersecurity products. Everything is becoming code. So you have testers that are becoming developers. You have cybersecurity experts that need also to be developers now. So it's changing the way we operate, but it's also changing the way we have to learn, because you can't just expect to go to some university and spend, 5 years there and learn what you have to do for the next 10, 20 years. In fact, it's pretty much a complete change every 2 years. And so we're spending a lot of time on trying to understand how do we bring this self-learning capability where you have content from the commercial side, videos, where you could have a virtualized environment where as a developer, you can start coding or practicing what you're learning. So you don't just, learn in a vacuum. You have that training video, and then you also have that virtualized stack in parallel to actually implement what you just learned. And so that's probably the biggest challenge, is how do we keep up both the defense industrial base and the military and the civilian members of the U.S. government? How do we keep up with that self-learning pace, which does require some level of dedication, and having to spend at least an hour a day to learn new things is not easy for everybody, right? So how do you find that time, and how do you give people that time to go and watch that video, watch that training? So we're starting to use a lot YouTube and other means to share content.
You know what I think one of the biggest impact for Kessel Run was? Staffing. The core, you went out and got airmen and then trained other ones to what you wanted to do. So one of the things I see in the federal government is there's no T skills. It's very thin, and it's not their fault. It's just the way we wanted to staff this. And then as the contract ended, my core competency went out the window. Kessel Run keeps that with that these people are going to be there for a long time and be able to have that government still in this thing. So I think that's a huge impact. Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects recently, measurement. Metrics, KPIs, and SLAs. You know what's crazy about our industry is we love making a product in the blind, and then when it gets down, and then we're like, okay, now we need to take care of something we don't even know how it happens, right? But if you go into manufacturing, they know how every screw is put in, they know how every wheel goes on, they know exactly how it goes through the process. So how are you guys focusing in on that development and delivery pipeline a little bit more?
Yeah, I think the key aspect of DevSecOps is all these KPIs that have been already proven on the commercial side. You have dozens of them, mean time to recovery, mean time to production, and really demonstrating the ability to release new features fast while also demonstrating the ability to fix issues rapidly. So you're more likely to be okay with spending a shorter amount of time to deploy it to begin with, right? So if you know you can fix it in a second, you're probably more likely to be more agile and be okay taking more risks, right? And so the ability to be able to do that in minutes and push software to production in seconds or multiple times a day. There is a reason why Facebook is doing 15,000 releases a day, or Google is doing 150 million tests a day on their software. One is Facebook is doing a lot of A/B testing and trying to find ways to tweak, their UI and their software and get feedback from the end user. And it's not about user acceptance testing and spending days of talking to people. You don't see Facebook calling you and asking you if you like that feature or not, right? They use telemetry, they use logs to know where someone is getting stuck, how often they find the next step, and is it easier on this version versus that UI, and so changing that rapidly brings a ton of value. On top of that, you have Google doing 150 million tests a day. That's for resilience of the software, right? So if you're making a change, it's not going to break something that you already have. You can do your regression testing baked in. So improving your test coverage, is critical. And too often we're paying or buying software that has no tests, right? Or 10% test coverage. And now you literally cannot demonstrate that if you make a change, you can trust that you didn't break something. And so you're back to doing months of manual testing, right? And again, you bring a human in the loop that might do a test differently than if you do it with 5-6 different people.
Never the same way twice.
Never the same way. So,
but it got me the other day. Somebody told me it's a good thing about Agile. We don't have to test anymore. I'm like, that's wrong. Painful hearing that.
It's not true either.
No, it's please spread the word. It's not true. And let me go back to that for a second. I know you've gotten pushback I saw on a recent, I think it was the Defense Acquisition University. We did a presentation, and somebody got up to the mic and said, "We're not Google. We're not Facebook. I don't push weapon systems 150 times a day." But I thought the thing that was missed was the ability to do that. Not that I want you to do that, but I have to have the ability to strike very quickly. Because if I don't, the time between the vulnerability or the capability I want to put it and the time I can do it is a huge window of vulnerability that I got to make sure I don't have.
Yes, and I think the more we move to AI, machine learning, deep learning, that is going to really change, because that's where you need to be able to update the models and the training data and adjust to whatever you're seeing in real life, in real time. And so if you can't do that, I don't even think you can succeed in the next big war, which is cyber and AI machine learning. In fact, in cyber particularly, be able to adjust to both for cyber offense and defense, be able to adjust rapidly in a matter of minutes, if need be, is critical. So it's not so much you're going to do it 150 times a day. You might react to 150 different events. And then on top of that, I say, okay, you're not Google, but what about SpaceX and what about Tesla? Do you relate a little bit more, right? And so SpaceX has been so successful in a matter of 10 years, mostly because of the ability to do rapid prototyping and try things fast and fail fast if need be, right? And so again, they kind of often miss the point of we're not trying to disrupt and change things just for the heck of changing things, right? We're trying to improve and learn. And if you can learn fast, then you should come up with new ideas. And if you are, you need to be able to deploy them and test them rapidly as well.
So talk about AI deployments and AI provisioning, or putting AI into the whole mix.
So AI is really game-changing, and particularly machine learning and deep learning. We have obviously a lack of talent like everybody else in terms of data science, but it's interesting to me because I actually think that we won't need that many data scientists, because we're just going to push a lot of compute to the problem. And there's a lot of new tools now that give you the ability to just try all the different models and find the one that's going to provide the best value and not really need the data scientists anymore. And so we're going to solve the problem through compute. But again, for the value that we get, right, being able not to have to tell the system how to behave, but just tell it, here's the data I have, and here's what I mean by success or failure. And that for the system to figure out the best way to get there, sometimes with things we don't even understand. There's a lot of examples now where you realize that the machine learning or deep learning algorithm realize something that even the best human experts, including in healthcare, do not understand how they got there, right? Being able to detect gender by looking at some visual data that you would be like, a human will not be able to come up to the same conclusion than the machine learning algorithm. So that tells you, in effect, they become smarter than what we can even comprehend. That's a little bit scary, because that's when they can start making decisions that you don't even understand. So you obviously have to keep in mind the power of these tools.
So one of the things that is going to be a real, I think, a challenge is agile contracting and acquisition. Really smart people in contracting in the federal government, they understand the problem, but a lot of this is habit and culture. How do we get around that? Or at least, how do we get evolving towards a better state with that?
It was always surprising to me that we're still buying the waterfall way and still trying to do agile DevSecOps in the middle of it. So it's a agile fall thing, which doesn't really work, right? And so we see a lot of new training coming out. You mentioned DAU. They built a new agile training for contracting officers. And I actually went and listened to what they were proposing, and that's actually very smart. It's not rocket science, honestly. I think we've been doing it on the commercial side for 20 years. Instead of buying predefined requirements, you buy skills or teams or sprints, right? And then you assign some type of measure of success, definition of done, service level agreements, right, to demonstrate that they are delivering the quality that you expect. And you have the gate baked in to measure that. And again, I'm surprised that we don't have clauses that are already templated just for reuse. So in fact, Dr. Roper asked me to build a portal where we're going to have these agile clauses for IP, intellectual property, for agile contracting, where you have example of basic clauses that you can reuse for your contract.
All right, one last question. Are you going to take the ride on the F-16?
Yes.
Okay, that's the right answer. Because if you weren't, I would go ahead and I'll fill
scared.
in for you.
I have to say I was scared.
Did you go on it already?
No.
Okay.
I'm still scared, but when they proposed, I got really scared because I saw the video where they can go 50,000
thrust on vertical
in 1 minute. I was like,
I'm going to
die.
You're not going to find a ride in an amusement park like this.
No. I don't know if I would want to try that in an amusement park, if I would trust it. But I trust our airmen, so I'll do it.
Well, thanks for coming down, Nicolas. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, giving the insight and perspective on how DevSecOps is going to transform IT. We're trying on our hardest on this side, so we're rooting for you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
The Agile Advocate is a production of Government CIO Media and Research. For more podcasts, head to governmentcio.com/podcasts. The Agile Advocate is produced by Amy Kluber. It is hosted by Bill Drew. Edited by Resonate Recordings. Theme music provided by Big Hoax. If you're interested in sponsoring a podcast, contact us at sponsor@governmentcio.com.